Hi everyone, welcome back to another chapter, part 3 in fact, of the short story by Damon Runyon called Lonely Heart, from his series of short stories called On Broadway, which Guys and Dolls the musical was based on. And if you remember, Nicely Nicely's married this widow, doesn't know her from anything, he just replied to an ad in a Lonely Hearts column. But he seems to be quite happy, and she's feeding him well enough and doesn't want him to do anything around the house. But she has just taken out a $5,000 insurance policy on him. Anyway, let's see what happens next. He gets along first class with the widow Crumb and never has a cross word with her. And he even makes friends with the old Joskin, Harley, by helping him with his work, although Nicely Nicely is not really fitted by nature for much work. And what he likes best at the farm is the eating and the sleeping, especially the eating. For a while he finds it difficult to get as much sleep as he requires, because the widow Crumb is a great hand for staying up late, reading books in their bedroom by kerosene lamp, and at the same time eating molasses candy, which she personally manufactures. And sometimes she does both in bed, and the molasses candy bothers Nicely Nicely no little until he becomes accustomed to it. Once he tries reading one of her books to put himself to sleep after she dozes off ahead of him. But he discovers that it is all about nothing but spiritualism, and about parties in this life getting in touch with characters in the next world. And Nicely Nicely has no interest whatever in matters of this nature, although he personally knows a character by the name of Spooks McGurk, who claims to be a spiritualist, and who makes a nice thing of it in connection with tips and the races. Until the racetrack fuzz catches up with them, that is. Nicely Nicely never discusses the books with the widow Crumb, because in the first place, he figures it is none of his business, and in the second place, the more he reads, the better chance he has of getting to sleep before she starts snoring. Because it seems that as a snorer, the widow Crumb is really all American material, although of course Nicely Nicely is too much of a gentleman to make an issue of this. She gives him 3 meals every day, and every meal is better than the last. And finally, Nicely Nicely is as fat as a goose and can scarcely wobble. But he notices that the widow Crumb never once fails to set the 4th place that nobody ever fills. And furthermore, he suddenly commences to notice that she always puts the best cuts of meat and the best of everything on the plate at this place. And even though she throws it all away afterwards. Well, this situation preys on Nicely Nicely's mind, and he cannot bear to see all this good fodder going to waste. So one morning, he gets hold of old Harley and puts the siphon on him, because by this time, Harley talks freely with Nicely Nicely, although Nicely Nicely can see that Harley is somewhat simple in spots, and his conversation seldom makes much sense. Anyway, he asks Harley what the widow Crumb's idea is about an extra place at the table, and Harley says like this. Well, the place is for Jake. Jake who? Nicely says. Do not recall his other name. He is her 3rd or 4th husband. I do not remember which Jake is the only one the widow Crumb ever loves. Although she does not discover this until after Jake departs. So, in memory of Jake, she always sets his place at the table and gives him the best she has. She misses Jake and wishes to feel that he is still with her. What happens to Jake? Nicely Nicely asks. Arsenic, Harley says. Jake departs 10 years ago. Well, of course, all this news to Nicely Nicely, and he becomes very thoughtful, to be sure, because in all the time he is married to the widow Crumb, she does not crack to him about her other husbands. And in fact, Nicely Nicely has no idea there is ever more than one. What happens to the others, he says. Do they depart the same as Jake? Yes, Harley says. They all depart, one by one. I remember number 2 well. In fact, you remind me of him. Carbon monoxide, Harley says. A charcoal stove in his room. It is most ingenious. The coroner says number 3 commits suicide by hanging himself with a rope in the barn loft. Number 3 is small and weak, and it is no trouble whatever to handle him. Then comes Jake, Harley says. Unless Jake is number 3 and the hanging item is number 4. I do not remember exactly. But the Widow Crumb never employs arsenic or any other matters of this nature again. It is too slow. Jake lingers for hours. Besides, Harley says, she realizes it may leave traces if anybody happens to get nosy. Now, Jake is a fine-looking character, Harley says, but a ne'er-do-well. He is a plumber from Salt Lake City, Utah, and has a hearty laugh. He is always telling funny stories. He is a great eater, even better than you, and he loves beans the way the Widow Crumb cooks them, with bacon and tomatoes. He suffers no little from the arsenic. He gets it in his beans. Number 5 comes upon a black widow spider in his bed. He is no good. Number 5, that is. Well, by the time, nicely, it's very thoughtful, to be sure, because what Harley says is commencing to sound somewhat disquieting. Number 6, he steps on a plank in the doorway of the house that drops a 200-pound keystone on his head, and the Widow Crumb personally figures this out herself. She's very bright. It is like a figure-4 trap, and has to be very accurate. An inch one way or the other, and the stone misses number 6. I remember he was a big win on the back of his neck. He's a carpenter from Keokuk, Iowa, Harley says. Why, Nicely says, do you mean to say that the Widow Crumb purposely arranges to use up husbands in the manner you describe? Oh, sure, Harley says. What do you suppose she marries them for? It's a good living to her because of the insurance. Although, to show you how bright she is, she does not insure number 5 for a dime, so people can never say she is making a business of the matter. Here's a total loss to her, but it quiets talk. I'm wondering what she will think up for you. Well, Nicely now commences to wonder about this too, and he hopes and trusts that whatever she thinks up, it will not be a black widow spider, because if there is one thing Nicely despises, it is insects. Furthermore, he does not approve of hanging or of dropping rates on people. After giving the matter some thought, he steps into the house and mentions to the Widow Crumb that he will like to pay a little visit to town, figuring that if he can get to town, she will never see him again for heel dust. Well, let's see what happens. Will the Widow Crumb let Nicely go into town on his own? Sounds like a lady that knows what she's doing, doesn't she? And get all the insurance money. Anyway, until next time, stay safe, be good. Most of all, be kind, won't you? See you soon. Goodbye. Bye.